I always had hoped it was a mistake, a misidentity. I'd always hoped and prayed that one day he'd come walking in and go, here I am.
Speaking about it was something that just was not done. And I'm more than sure it's because of my mother's pain and trauma.
Pictures of my dad never hung in the house. You never seen them.
I remember one time I was probably in second or third grade, they took a moment of silence for Memorial Day, and I just broke down and started crying. And they sent me to the office, and they never took the moment of silence after that.
My father's name is Wayne Allen McConkey.
My father's name was Walter J. Carney.
My father's name is William Joseph Cahill.
My father was Charles William Dornan.
Robert Louis Howard.
Charles Thomas Nally.
My father's name was Donald Glenn Droz.
We're clearing a perimeter now, putting troops ashore, and there's room for medevac, somebody to come in for medevac. Some of the people will be ambulatory, some will require stretcher, and I don't have an accurate count yet. I'll give it to you as soon as I got it. Over.
And there was a ring at the front doorbell. And I answered the door. I opened the door, and there was a naval officer standing there in a uniform. And I knew, I knew why he was there. And I said to him only, I asked him, is he dead? And he said yes. And I slammed the door in his face and left him on the front porch. And I went and I got you out of your bed. I woke you up from your sleep. And I picked you up. And I walked back to the front door and I opened it. And he was still standing there. And I handed you to him. And I said, you tell her, and you tell her why.
People say, when you say that your father was killed in Vietnam and that you were only 4 months old, they say, oh, well then, you never really knew him. And then when they find out how old I was when my mother remarried, then they say, oh, well then that's the only father you've ever known. And it should be fine.
The problem has been that even though I had this longing, even though I wanted to know about my father, even though I wanted to talk about him, I never brought him up because I knew that bringing him up would hurt the people who knew him. It was too painful for everyone, and in many ways, just easier to forget. And then, on March 16th, 2001, I was surfing the internet and I just typed my father's name into a search engine. And up came an account of how he was killed in Vietnam with information no one in my family had ever known before, written by a man who was with him on his boat and witnessed him die. And for the first time in my life, I thought, you know what? Maybe I can ask about him. Maybe I can sort of ask the questions I've always wanted to ask. Maybe I can just go there. And so within 10 days, I borrowed a video camera, borrowed some lights, and I was making a documentary about my father. I know this is hard for you, Mom.
Yeah,
know that. What do you want?
Well, I was going to say, part of what's hard about it is that, as I look at some of the, I've been reading some of the letters this morning. It's like it takes me back to a happy time, and then when I have to close them up and sit down, and I realize that, it's gone. So, where do you want to start?
My mother took a suitcase out of her closet and began to read my father's letters. She started with one of the first he'd ever written her.
I'm 6 feet tall with my shoes on and weigh about 175 pounds with my shoes off. I have brown hair with a blonde spot on the side of my head. Unfortunately, it's not my only imperfection. I also have green eyes and several cavities, even though I brush with Crest after every meal. Be good until Christmas vacation, smile pretty, and write sometime soon like tonight. All my love, Don.
There was so much locked away in boxes and trunks that I'd never known existed before now. These tiny things that revealed glimpses of my father.
One sock. One sock. But it's a nice sock. Feels nice. Yeah.
It was a phone call my mother recorded 35 years ago when my father was about to go overseas. On the other end of this bad connection, I heard his voice for the first time.
I'll probably love you by default. What? What, honey?
Why would you care if you love me like a father?
I didn't say like a father. I said by default.
Like a father.
No. That's not me.
I love you, Sharon. So much.
I miss you too. That's why I don't want you to go. When are you going to come back? When are you going to come back? I said, when are you going to come back?
When will you come back? Thursday? I don't know. About a year. Probably.
And it is, it's like these things that we want to have of him are, you want so much, like, I wanted to hear him better, and you're just like, the little bits, I know. But the other thing is you sound so different.
The woman I heard on that tape couldn't have sounded more unlike my mother now. With the demands of her law practice, her 12, 14-hour days in a high-rise in San Francisco, a woman buried in a busy life.
I have all of the letters that Don ever wrote to me, from the time we had our first date until the day before he died, and everything in between. I have all those letters, and they're wonderful to have. I don't read them very often because it's too painful, because there's no point in it. I had thought that my letters to him did not come back from Vietnam. Thinking about it some more, I realized that that's not true. It must have happened at a moment of extreme emotional pain, because I don't remember it very clearly at all. But what I remember is sitting at the fireplace, sort of one by one, some reading, I think some not, but throwing into the fire and burning the letters that I wrote to him. I couldn't keep alive. I couldn't allow to live that deep love for him that I had expressed in those letters. I had to let it go. And what label you want to put on that part of me, youthful, frivolous, playful, whatever it is, yeah, I died.
Can I say that you tried to forget him? Is that right?
No, but what would be true would be to say that I wanted not to feel the pain. I mean, I see sort of where you're coming from, or I think with these questions and with this wondering, it's like some sense of betrayal of him that I stopped talking about him. To the extent to which there was any motivation at all, it was a motivation to have you have a happy childhood and as normal as possible. The thinking was, we want to leave this ugly war behind. We want to leave that horrible chapter in our nation's history behind. We want to just leave it.
Within months of my father's death, my mother became active in the anti-war movement. In November 1969, she led the March Against Death, which was one of the largest demonstrations ever held at the nation's capital.
Our nation is at war. Americans, real, human Americans, are dying at this moment in Vietnam. Can you be at peace? Listen to the casualty statistics when they are announced this week. Listen, and dear God, hear them, and think what those statistics mean.
Get that first one good. Please back up.
The anti-war movement was how my mother coped with my father's death, and it was also how she met David.
I think I felt a mission from the time that I came along and you were a baby, Tracy. Not a mission to take your father's place, but to really become your father. Also, I have, I think, felt always inadequate to the task and inadequate by comparison. And it's not like these new revelations somehow make that easier or make Don more human. It's a new chapter in the heroic epic that by which I feel further diminished, actually, and it's hard, and I'm doing the best I can with it.
I think, you know, even though I'm making a lot of people revisit things that are very, very painful, and there's a lot of guilt, and there's a lot of conflicted emotions about doing that, I have to believe, and I do believe, that somehow there is some good in talking about things that haven't been talked about, and talking about a human being that's kind of been shut away for 30 some odd years.
Generally, you know, people hesitate to bring it up. We never talked about it when, you know, like, I never talked with my mother or my dad about the situation. You know, he just was killed. I didn't know how he was killed other than it was just a war situation.
People ask me sometimes details. I had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't, because I didn't want to hear any of it. I mean, you know, I just, how he died, whether he died, hopefully that he died instantly, but I didn't want to hear about it, so I never asked, never let anybody tell me. Now I more or less want to know a little more than I did then. Just been the years that's gone by.
Grandma, I don't know about this. I don't know if this is such a good idea.
Well, listen, if I get a little light back here, I got it.
Okay, you got it?
Yeah.
It's in there. It's in the back part of the old house. Oh my gosh. You died.
One time I said to my mother that I thought it was such a waste that he was killed in a war that we did not even support. And she was very definitely offended by it. And in hindsight, I think rightly so, because she said if she felt the same way, she would lose her mind.
It's just all of my letters that I got.
I wanted to write you a few lines and tell you how sorry I am about Don. I know now words don't mean much, as your sorrow is so great it is almost unbearable. Later, it will turn to the precious memories that you have and hold dear of him.
I'm glad you made me go up there, Tracy, because if you hadn't, no one else could have found that. It would have been sold with the house.
I had these made from the slides that were in his trunk. And that was around the time when they had just made the overseas call to my mother's father to ask permission to marry.
Uh-huh. He called Judy's dad and asked for her hand. Not bad, not bad. He wasn't born yesterday either, was he? You know, it's strange seeing a picture that I've never seen of my brother. His hair looks dark there. I always remember it being brown or lighter, anyway.
I don't know if you've seen, have you seen these?
I'm going to have to thumb right through these. I'll look at those tonight.
There was so much controversy about Vietnam, and you wonder if it was a life, whether it makes you wonder sometimes,
Maybe Don might have written me or something, and the fact that he felt like that this was a blunder, there's a mistake, something needs to be done differently, it's not working, and a lot of kids are getting killed, and they're just not getting anywhere.
I've actually always wanted to ask, or I don't know, I wanted to ask this. How come you were the one that you went up to Kansas City to identify the body? How come you did?
Well, it had been too much for his dad and Paul both.
Did you see him before they did the...
Well, I saw him as the Navy sent him back in before the local undertaker got him.
I mean, I know this is kind of, I don't know.
Well, Tracy, in times of war like that, they patched him up rather hurriedly and quickly, and he was recognizable and all that. I mean, most of the damage was, I don't know how much I want to tell you, honey. I really don't. I don't know what you need to know. But,
I wanted to be sure that it was Don. They were, of course, they were going to open the casket, but they did for the family. But I didn't go over there. I stayed there and then I just wanted them to all get away so I could be there by myself. And so they went out on the porch of the funeral home. And so then I went over and I didn't think I could stand to look at him and like that. And so I just got down on my hands and knees and kind of crawled over there just to be sure I could see that light spot on the side of his head. And I know then it was sure Don. That's the only view I had of him. I didn't want any other. I could just remember him like he was.
I don't receive any comfort going to the cemetery. Maybe when I'm older, but that doesn't mean anything to me. Is there any place or thing that does? Anytime I see a GTO, I think of him. Muddy riverbanks. It's the color of your eyes. The color of my eyes? To me, you have his eyes. Then, fortunately, you have the rest of your mother's features. There was some part of when he laughs or smiles in a certain way that we both have, that you have. So it's real little things.
Do you think I would have been different had I had him as a father?
Oh, no doubt it'd be different, and things like that happen. Tracy, there's nothing else you can do but accept it and try to go from there.
If you're in the battle for the Lord and right, keep on the firing line. If you win, my brother, surely you must fight. Keep on the firing line. There are many dangers that we all must face. If we die of fighting, it is no disgrace. Coward in the service, he will find no place. So keep on the firing line.
One of the first times he came, when he was showing me around town and pointed out this church to me, he showed me something that he was responsible for doing that was not the Don that most of us knew. I don't know how old he was. I don't remember that part of the story.
Where are we going? Oh no. Look at that.
Not too subtle that he carved his name in there or did it somehow or other. And all these years it survived. And every time I come back, I always look because I'm afraid they're going to paint this and that this will be gone.
I love that. But I can't believe you never told me that.
No, it was a secret, like I said.
If it could just be easier, if I could just walk up to them and they would say, oh, here's my memory of your father, without pulling it out of them. But it's not, and it's no one's fault because it's been 32 years.
So where are we, Grandma Rose?
Where are we?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have any idea.
What city are we in?
Oh, I'm city. I know the city, Washington, D.C. I suppose we're out of Washington, D.C. now. We're out of Baltimore, aren't we?
Yeah, we left Baltimore behind.
We used to hack around a lot, We were pretty irreverent, all of us. We used to have flare fights, Going back, we'd get out of the river and we were so happy to be alive and to be safe that, we'd start crisscrossing around each other's wakes and diving in and, shooting flares at each boat. We had a lot of fun in that way. We had a lot of fun. Instead of being stupid, But he was a great he was a wonderful comrade.
Good.
He was a wonderful comrade, friend. I mean, he's one of those people you just I feel good about. That you really feel a sense of pride in. It's nice. Where are you going from here?
Tomorrow morning we go to the the wall. We're actually going there early in the morning.
He has not been there.
I've never been to the wall. Oh, wow.
So
I'm so glad you're going to go down
Oh, I
there.
am too. So many people have sent me a rubbing. In fact, you sent one.
Yeah, I did. I remember. I did.
And
Yeah.
my friends that come to see the wall, well, they all make a rubbing, and some take pictures and send, or some leave something there, in memory of Don.
Can I give you a hug?
You
take care.
Everything.
Thanks a lot.
Don mentioned you so much.
Well, you've been great, Judy, through this. I mean, tell you, when you stood up years ago, and you've been just straight and true.
Thanks, John. Sometimes I ask, what would he want me to do? What would he have me do now?
I want you to be happy. Yeah.
That's what I told her.
I want you to be happy.
Oh, does this feel good? Ooh.
long day, huh? What are you bringing tomorrow to the wall?
I'm going to take a letter to Don and some flowers. Even if I have to pick them off of the Capitol bushes. At 7 o'clock in the morning, nobody will be around, I don't think.
And I'm writing my own note, and I'm putting this. Oh. What are you going to say about this? I thought that we were laughing at that picture. It's just hard. It feels like we're like saying goodbye to him or something. It feels like we have to somehow stop remembering him, and there is a part of remembering him that I really enjoy. So, I was thinking that maybe we could. These things have been in the closet. So, maybe we could organize them in some way and figure what we were going to put back in the garage, and put them back in the garage, and what we wanted to keep out and stuff like that.
Okay. Keep out for what?
Keep out for us, for memories or something.
Well, the garage isn't very far away. And, I mean, it's fine. We can do whatever you want with whatever this stuff is, but, putting it in the trunk and putting it in the garage is not like throwing it away.
Well, it's kind of felt like that because it gets buried and stuff, and it's hard to get out, and one person can't get it out, and I haven't known that half the stuff has been there. I don't know. I don't think that my mother gets it. It's like I'm not supposed to have these feelings, but I have them. You know, I mean, I'm not supposed to have pain. I'm not supposed to have confusion. I'm not supposed to have anger. I'm not supposed to bring things up that are inconvenient for people. I'm not supposed to dredge up the past. I'm just supposed to deal with it, you know, and be polite and go to baseball games and not think about this stuff. And I guess I just don't know. I really don't know how to get past it, except by instigating certain things or trying to talk to people. And we feel very, very alone in all of this.
I am alone.
What about me?
What do you mean, what about you?
I mean, don't we have each other? No?
And the grief that I feel is different from the grief that you feel. And the grief that you feel is different from the grief that I feel. What you grieve for is partly that he died, but more so that you didn't have his memory in your life.
You know, but now I do. So, I mean, you don't have to feel guilty.
Well, I don't feel guilty. I just feel alone. That's all.
Because you have to live with the thought that you kept his memory from me?
No, because I have to live with my own grief.
I made this trip here to the Naval Academy without my mother, and I'm kind of glad she didn't come. The thing about having her here, if she had come, her grief would overshadow my being able to ask questions or get information about who my father was. And I think, you know, that's what I'm being for the first time, really, is I'm being kind of selfish about wanting to have my own relationship with my father.
I got the impression that he didn't like the morning all that much, and he would sort of come out sort of groggy and sort of like, let's get this over with so we can, you know, eat and then go back to bed or do whatever we're going to do, you know. He didn't take himself too seriously or take the academy too seriously, and I like that.
He always wanted to travel his own road. Like I said, he's the one that had the tan blazer instead of the blue blazer. The rest of us had blue blazers because that's what everybody always had forever, you know. He went with the tan blazer, you know, he stood out.
And I'm searching for my father in all of these different men that I'm meeting. And each time I meet another man my father's age, there's always this sort of game that I play in my mind, or this imagination. You know, could this have been my dad? You know, would my dad have looked like this? Would he have, you know, had a full head of hair? Or would he have gone to my dance recitals? Or would he be taking out pictures of me?
Don meant a lot to me, and was one of my true life friends that I think, had he lived, would have been absolute true life friend, somebody that, you know, weekends you just call up and say, how the heck are you? You know, where are you? What's happening?
Yeah.
And I miss him. I needed him a lot more than I was able to have him.
I've always felt like I wanted to meet you so I could at least kind of give you a hug to and say that you know, we understand what you're going through.
This is my grandmother. We recently, as part of this, we went to the
Oh,
wall. This my
uh-huh.
grandmother had never been.
Your grandmother in Droz?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we took her, and that's.
I've never been either. I've never had.
Yeah.
I've never.
This is this.
I've never been able to do it. At the at our reunion.
Excuse me,
I guess
I get
yeah,
emotional.
So do I.
I think we've all needed you to come here and join us and be part of this, because it's helped us deal with our loss in Don. Bravo Zulu. Bravo Zulu is well done in the signal flags. Carry on.
After the Naval Academy, I traveled to Selma, where I found two of my father's friends who were with him on the rivers in Vietnam.
I remember your dad being a lot like me. He was a smartass, which I was too. And you know, you give him an opening, and you know, it's like he's gonna grab it and run with it. And he was hilarious. He was funny as hell. He always had a off-the-wall comment about anything. He was very friendly to his crew. You know, his crew loved him. Very friendly to them, and very friendly to, you know, enlisted pukes, as we called ourselves. Where some officers weren't, some were.
He wore pebble grain brown shoes, which were not Navy issue shoes.
Not regulation.
To say the least, you know.
Why do you wear them?
An expression of
individuality.
Yeah, of individuality, of
and you might
self-confidence, of lack of being intimidated by the system. You know,
Navy might own my body, but they don't own my feet. Anything like any kind of form of protest, you know.
I sort of had this realization that the kind of man that I'm learning my father was, is exactly the kind of father that I have wanted. And it's kind of interesting that that would be the kind of father that I would crave, is the kind of father that he was. And so part of me thinks like, well, that must be why I crave it, because, you know, that was who I was supposed to have. That was the kind of father I was supposed to have. You saw this picture, right?
No.
Well,
I'm just so glad they got him. That he didn't get left there. I mean, he was obviously gone by this time, so. What strikes me more than anything in looking at this is the care of those guys for him. I can see it. You know, they're taking great care here. And that means a lot. When you think about it, in some ways, when this project is over for you, you will know more about Don than you know about me. Because what you're doing is something, in some ways, obviously not in other ways, you will have your own experience of me.
well, I've
of 30
known you.
years.
I've
Well,
grown
that's
up
what
with
I
you
mean.
for
That's what I
30
mean.
I've
You
never-
have your own experience of me, but you don't know what other people think of me. I'm not suggesting you should, but you know, what you are finding out about Don and the story of his life, most children never find out about their parents because they don't interview their teachers and their coaches and their high school friends and their college roommates and their whatever. And I know that you're doing it so that you have the sense of him that you otherwise would never have. There's no value judgment to this. It's not that you should. But of course you're finding out things about Don that I never knew.
So, Mom.
Yeah?
Why'd you want to come today?
Oh, just interest in what's going on, curiosity to meet him, curiosity to hear what it is he's going to say, and the thought that maybe there will be some closure for him, and maybe for me, although I doubt that. I mean, I don't feel the need for closure in this kind of way.
Ted Peck told this story we'd never heard before, how my father begged him to go in his place to the violent Mekong Delta It was just a few weeks before I was born, and all my dad wanted was to live to see me.
I got to say one thing, your father was persistent. But he said, you know, he could not go because he'd never see his baby. And you weren't born yet. So that smooth talking SOB got me to say okay, but on one condition. He gave me 3 bottles of Johnny Walker Black Scotch, and somehow he found them. He must have gone to somebody opened up the package store and he got 3 bottles of Scotch, and then he and I went to the old club and there was nobody there but us, and we opened up the bottle and we drank half of it, the 2 of us. And he was, you know, he was relieved. It's like that last day of finals when it's over.
My dad made it to R&R. And so for 5 days in Hawaii, that one and only time, we got to be a family.
This turned out to be exactly 2 weeks before Don died. But he got to see Tracy.
You know, all the stories I told about Vietnam were all the funny ones. But I never told the real stories. I never told them how I felt. I always told them the stories about, you know, the entertainment value. And it was like, no big deal, no big deal. But that was the exterior. And
You know, I have always worn Don's ring. I've never not worn it, and my name is Judith Droz Keys. That's the name that's there. And people would ask from time to time, Droz, is that your maiden name? And my stock answer in response to that was always no. That was my first husband who died in Vietnam. And people would then say, oh, I'm so sorry, or something like that. You know, how sad, I'm so sorry. And my stock answer always was, and I don't think I say was, because I'm not sure it is anymore since what we're going through now. My stock answer always was, not flippant, but simply, it was a long time ago.
That's me.
Wait.
Me with my fresh washed little face just out of OCS. And that picture of Don with his hands like this, you know, when he hasn't yet done it. And you just have no idea what's going to happen to you. You have no idea, you know, what has to occur to, and it has to occur because if you don't make it.
What went through your mind when you considered talking to me about doing this?
Well, the first thing, I was a little afraid of your mom. Because I have lived all these years with a lot of guilt about your dad. You know, I've always thought, you know, if I'd been there that day, could it have made any difference? If I'd been there when they were putting that operation together, could somebody have spoken up and said one thing and another? All of what might, you know, and you just, I loved your dad as a comrade, and I hated to lose him. And I felt a terrible sense of responsibility to you and your mom for what happened over there, and I don't know why, you know. And the other thing was, I have to confess to you that when I was hurt and I got sent away and my eyes started to get better, I was in no particular hurry to get back. You know, the eye was screwed up, but yeah, I probably could have just gone back sooner than I did. And I didn't, it wasn't until I sat on the edge of my bed and read a little Stars and Stripes item about the ambush in which Don was killed, and then subsequently discovered that one of my best friends had gotten killed while I was sitting on my ass in a hospital. And I've lived with that all these years. And to me, you were never more than a 3-month-old baby. And all of a sudden, with this phone call, you grew up and you became a flesh and blood person. And it was, you know, it's probably been really good for me, to tell you the truth. It's probably been really helpful for me to come to face off with this and to live with it. It's never very far away, is it?
No, it's not.
The pain is never very far away.
No. You say, you know, middle age, you're closer to tears. I also think maybe at middle age, I don't know what the right words are, that we're somehow, I don't want to say ready, because I don't think we're ever ready, but strong enough, ready to deal with it in a way that I don't think I was for a lot of years. I mean, it was a long time when I just couldn't go there. I just couldn't. I just couldn't. I mean, it was too scary. It was too hard.
We're about to go meet Peter Upton. This all feels a little surreal. Like I'm not actually going to go meet the man who wrote the article. I feel a little, you know, I feel a little like, it sounds weird, but a little like on the verge of crying, a little on the verge of throwing up, you know, just kind of, I'm a little rattled about it. This all started with finding your article.
When was that?
That was on March 16th.
You remember it quite exactly. I wrote the article. You start there. I was there. And it's even now difficult to think about the shock of the experience because it was so overwhelming.
We were proceeding up the river in what I felt at the time, and certainly in hindsight, view as a very precarious situation. Very precarious.
The Don Quixote, which is the river where your dad was killed, was infamous for being, you know, infested with Viet Cong and so on.
When you're on those boats, you never knew what was around the next bend.
Frequently, the swift boats will go up a tributary or river and engage in fire. And if you're the first boat or the second boat, you can sometimes get through that and beyond it. And it's the boats that are trailing that are typically more vulnerable.
There were 13 boats, I think. It was 6 and 6. And then your dad was a spare guy that was the last guy to come in the river.
The blast went off in the tree line.
All of a sudden, rounds started going over the boats.
As soon as the column was hit, everybody knew that it was a major. It was a major strike, it was a major ambush. And everybody raced to get out of the kill zone. And we couldn't, because we were fully laden down. We had all of the weight.
The 43 boat was playing catch up, and it couldn't catch up.
We heard on the radio a faint call for help.
Radios were going wild.
16 request a SIGINT. Seawolf, I need a medevac. I'm at 058558. I have 7 boats with me on port and starboard banks.
That's when the boat careened. And what it did was it just lost steerage and ended up on the bank. As it turned out, it was right in front of the ambush.
It was a B-40 round in the pilot house, shrapnel.
A rocket had exploded interior in the cabin.
If a B-40 rocket went off in the pilot house of a 43 boat, then I don't know how anybody could have been in a pilot house and survived.
People said that he didn't really say much. He just moaned most of the time. He didn't really talk much after he was hit. Nobody got much communication out of him.
About 1 mile from this position. 43 boat is disabled 1 mile back. Did you say over? It's only 1 mile back. She's high and dropped. Over.
We charged back down the river again, and wasn't that much further we had to go. And we turned the corner, and devastating sight. I'm asking, where's Don? Is Don okay? Has anybody seen him? And crew member on my boat said, look over there. Where is he? I don't see him. And he says, under the blanket, the shoes. And I said,
It just says son right here. I want to say father.
I could have that put on. Yeah, we see about that. If you'd like it on there too, Judy, would you think that'd be nice?
Oh, very, yes.
Husband, son, father. Yeah, we'll do it. We will. We'll do it.
2 nights ago, I had a dream about my father. And I think it was the first dream that I've ever had about him. We're in a small town, and I'm walking down the street, and I see him, and he sees me, and he's in that blue shirt and the brown pants from the pictures of us together in Hawaii. And he smiles at me, you know, he sees me, and he hugs me, and he just hugs me really, really tightly. You know, my face is kind of in his shoulder. And, you know, the only slightly strange thing is that there's something underneath his shirt that, you know, like stitches or something that is like kind of keeping him together that I can feel through his shirt. But it really doesn't matter because he's there and he's warm, and I just totally, totally feel his presence. Doesn't say anything, and the whole dream he never says anything to me, but just smiles at me with that kind of, hey Trace, how you doing? Smile.
Tracy asked me if I wanted to look at those
Well,
last summer, and I said, no, can't do it. But I can now.
It's now been 33 years since my father was killed. And while I will always want more, one more second, one more breath, one more anything of him, for the first time in my life, I know my father just enough. He would have been a great father. And when I smile, I have his eyes. You think you'll see him again?
Sure. It would be a great day, won't it?